Mecos, yes, Los Mecos, no.
Hello, welcome to Local Matters. My name is Vicki Evans. Alzheimer's disease not only devastates the sufferers, but those who love and care for them. There is hope and a light at the end of the tunnel, and we're going to learn about that today. So please welcome Felipe Jacome. Felipe, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And Felipe is the Southern Arizona Regional Director of the Alzheimer's Association Desert Southwest Chapter. And then we welcome Ray Woosley, and Ray is the President of Critical Path Institute, or as we call it, CPATH. So thank you both so much for being here. Felipe, let's start talking about Alzheimer's, and there are related dementias. So why has the impact of this disease become such a national crisis and an economic crisis?
Well, I think that the primary reason is, in terms of the cost to our nation of Alzheimer's disease, it's over $150 billion. Now, $150 billion is a lot of change. Now, lately we've been talking in much larger numbers in terms of what's going on in Congress and nationally, but it's a huge amount, and it's only going to increase given the rapid growth in the demographic that's the people most affected by it. And the second piece, of course, it's now the sixth leading cause of death for Americans in the United States, fifth leading cause for people over the age of 65. So, because we expect both those things to increase in terms of the prevalence of the disease as well as the relative cost, Alzheimer's disease really has an economic impact far and away beyond what we had ever imagined. And of course, then the human cost in terms of the many, many family caregivers that care for people with Alzheimer's disease.
Talk about what, we say Alzheimer's. When I was growing up, there was, someone had senility. Thank you, Ray. Senility.
Senile dementia.
And now it seems that everyone has Alzheimer's. But related dementia. Let's just briefly mention what what's considered related
I should
dementia.
have talked about that before. We do all the dementias, and there's over 80 different kinds that have been identified so far, and they range from Parkinson's disease to Alzheimer's disease, Pick's disease, dementia with Lewy bodies, lots of other different kinds. And for many of them that we used to think of as kind of rare dementias, we've now discovered aren't so rare really, and it's possible that people have two or three. One of the things that's an issue is we don't know whether Alzheimer's disease is just one disease or is it a whole cluster of them that we haven't teased out the differences between them. But certainly people, the most commonly people present with issues about short-term memory loss, which is one of those things you see with Alzheimer's disease. And it's only in the last 5 or so years that our diagnostic capability has gotten so good that now you can diagnose during life. For years, you didn't know for sure what kind of dementia people had until after death, until an autopsy.
That's right, because the genetic education, right, and the science of how Alzheimer's develops or works and then works on the body, that keeps growing, right? That body of knowledge.
It does, but we're still in the dark ages. I mean,
True.
One of our young scientists pointed out that it's like we used to talk about fever. Then we talked about yellow fever and scarlet fever, and then we talked about pneumococcal pneumonia. We're in the dark ages. Alzheimer's is dementia, and there are probably many, many causes. And until we break it down and understand it, each of those causes, we're going to have and we are having a hard time making progress, but we are learning every day. And the exciting thing is that people are working together on this because, as Felipe pointed out, I often mention that $150 billion is a fourth of a Wall Street bailout, but we spend it every year, and we're going to be spending $1 trillion on Alzheimer's unless something changes. And we talk about healthcare reform. It will bust the bank if we don't do something about this disease, and the personal impact on our people is going to be even more important than the trillions of dollars that we spend on this disease. So it's an imperative. We're looking at this at CPATH the way we did AIDS and HIV. It is a national disaster, a tsunami coming at us, and we have got to do something. And I think it's gotten so bad, the impact of this, that people are beginning to recognize that we've got to do something novel the way we did for AIDS.
Right. Yikes. The tsunami, that just
very
actually
scary.
It does describe it. But you mentioned the human cost, aside from the monetary value. And that's what this that I'm holding in my hands, right, is is the brochure that's talking about Open Skies, Open Hearts, and it's the mayor's let me make sure I say it right. The Mayor's Caregiver Education Conference. This is the 15th annual. So Felipe, talk a little about this.
This is a conference we have annually. As you said, it's our 15th annual one. It's the 4th one we've called the Mayor's Caregiver Education Conference. We've had a nice partnership with Mayor Walkup's office on it because his office, like so many elected officials' office, you know, they have daily with phone calls from people concerned about the disease. And as has been our case for a number of years, we do a conference where we combine the latest in research information and a lot of information about family caregiving. Dr. Woosley here joined us a couple of years ago. I think maybe at the conference that you were at that we're going to see some clips of a little later on, where we had Marwan Sabah talking about what you can do to reduce your risk for developing Alzheimer's disease and a lot of other things. We offer practical tips this year, and you know about this because we've done so much training with Tucson Police Department and the other law enforcement folks. We're going to have a special panel. It's just going to be about first responders so that people know what happens when they dial 911, when it's some kind of response, an elder falling or somebody with memory loss who's wandered and gotten lost. So it's going to be a very exciting conference. We're terrifically excited about it.
I highly recommend it to everyone. I really enjoyed it because I put on my medical hat, you know, as a doctor, and I learned enormous things that have happened in the last few years that most doctors don't know about. But then I put on my, you know, what I think will be an Alzheimer's hat pretty soon.
Let's hope
and
not.
I said, this is going to be helpful for me and for me to take care of my family.
Right. And I can remember Felipe has joined us in the past. We've done many stories with the Desert Southwest chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. And one of the astounding facts that I don't think has changed is that by the time you and I are 80, Felipe, one of us, 50% of all people who reach the age of 80 in the United States will have Alzheimer's.
Well, certainly symptoms, yeah.
Symptoms.
At the age 85, yeah, it's 49.7 or something. And you know, it's one of those things that grows constantly. And you know, many people have the characteristic plaques and tangles that you see with Alzheimer's disease, which were the hallmarks of the disease when it was described a little over 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But not everybody has the symptoms, you know. That's that whole genetic component which scares people.
Right.
We've discovered it's pretty
A lot
rare.
of the symptoms are hard to pick up.
Right.
And
So
they're not diagnosed.
let's talk
Right,
about, give
absolutely.
me the top 5, Felipe, what to look for.
Well,
Top
certainly,
5
I think we're showing the
We
warning
are.
signs now of Alzheimer's disease, and the number one, of course, is memory loss. And it's not memory loss as in where did I put my keys this morning. It's memory loss not knowing where those keys go to, that you have a car. It's when you're putting your shoes in the freezer and keeping them there. It's those kinds of things that are the kind of the things you look at with Alzheimer's disease. And the other dementias all have similar kinds of things. One that we're seeing a lot of is PICS, which is a frontal temporal dementia, a type of dementia which affects the part of the brain that's most visible on me, which is in front here. And that's where your executive functions happen. So it's things like losing all your inhibitions, you know, so not locking the house up at night, so your pets are escaping or wandering around yourself.
I want to talk a little more about PICS, the PICS disease.
Sure.
But I want to make sure that people know what critical path does.
Please.
Ray, so
Well, Critical Path is a unique entity, and it's based here in Tucson. It was started because the Tucson community recognized that the system that we have today of taking science and moving it to the patient is not on a good path. It's not taking the critical path that will get cures and treatments within 3 or 4 years. It's taking 15 years and $1 billion, so that even when we get successes, which are exceedingly rare every day, it costs too much. We can't afford the medicines that take 15 years and $1 billion. So CPATH brings together the industry, the scientists in academia and in companies with the FDA so that we can get those products developed more quickly, the way we did with HIV/AIDS.
right.
Within 3 years, we had new drugs. Within a year and a half, we had the first drug. So we're working very hard with the community to share the knowledge, to understand Alzheimer's, so that we can begin to make progress on it. And we are making progress in understanding but we're not making progress in getting cures and preventions.
Right, right. And I just want to take some time just so you have some information and can learn more by contacting the Alzheimer's Association Desert Southwest Chapter, located at 3003 South Country Club, Suite 209, and it's in the whole area of the food bank. So if you know where the food bank is, that's where the Alzheimer's Association is. The local number is 322-6601, and the hotline, or helpline really, is 1-800-272-3900. That's 1-800-272-3900. That's a 24-hour helpline. And then always go to the website. It's alzdsw.org, alzdsw.org. And then Critical Path Institute, located River Road, 1730 East River Road, Suite 200. Phone number 547-3440. That's 547-3440. And again, the website, c-path.org. That's c-path.org. So you're working on this fit between Alzheimer's and CPATH. Can you give us a specific? Is there something specific that's kind of exciting and breathtaking happening?
Well, I think what Ray was just talking about, the long period of time that takes before discovery of a potential treatment and actually gets into people's hands is just tragic. You know, a few years ago there was a trial involving a vaccine for Alzheimer's disease, and it was a relatively small trial, 360 or so people involved in that trial. And it was a trial that they stopped suddenly because it was encephalitis. I mean, there was people that were having, swelling of the brain, and they had to stop it because they killed several people in the process. But the other group of people that were in that trial, 300 and some of them, when they looked at MRIs and stuff, you didn't have plaques and tangles suddenly. It was a great improvement. But there was a disconnect, and there's always very few people involved in these trials. One of the things that Ray's working on, and we'll have him chat about it in a moment, is on it being more efficient in the way we manage that process.
The testing process.
The testing. We test drugs today the same way we did 50 years ago. So we need new testing methods. And drug companies develop drugs. They don't develop testing methods.
Right.
So we bring together the people who have the science and the technologies from universities and companies. For example, there's an exciting new scanning method where you can see the amyloid that's in the brain with a scan from the outside. You don't have to open up the brain to see the amyloid. You can monitor that, and what we now need, and we're working on, is to get the FDA to accept a brain scan, a change in a brain scan, or prevention of changes in a brain scan as an approval for a therapy. Because if you wait until somebody doesn't develop dementia to approve a drug, it's going to take decades. So we believe there are treatments out there that could be effective. But how do you show that to the FDA in a way that they can be convinced? So these kind of new technologies need to be approved by the FDA, and that's where CPATH comes in. We don't submit drugs to the FDA, we submit new testing methods and ask them, is the science, we pull together the scientific community and get a consensus, and then ask the FDA, don't you agree that we should be using this scan, in this case, to know whether these drugs are working?
I have to ask you, has the FDA, because you've been at it for how long now, Ray? Critical
We're in
Path?
our fifth year.
Fifth year, which is really a short time.
It is.
But have you seen some loosening of the reins of that 50-year-old tradition by the FDA?
Absolutely, because they want to change,
Right.
but they can't just change because you want them to. They've got to have a basis and a reason. So what we've been able to do is we bring together the patients community, and that's where the Alzheimer's Association is essential to this, because they have to convey a sense of urgency, and they do very effectively. Then we have to bring in the data, because urgency alone won't do it. Data will change the FDA. And when we started CPATH 4 years ago, it was an experiment. We didn't know if the companies would share data. They are. We didn't know if the FDA would be there to look at that data. They are. We didn't know if we could change the process. But we now have the FDA and the European FDA on record as accepting 7 new tests that were never before accepted by the agency. But the science was there. People were demanding these tests be available. So yes, Tucson's experiment has worked.
Right. That's fabulous.
It
Actually,
is fabulous.
It is.
really
It's a
good.
small step,
It's a huge step.
but it's now a door we want to drive a truck
bet.
through.
You
You
bet.
bet.
You bet. So how does this work when you're doing? Let's talk a little about Alzheimer's and dementia, and is it the same with Parkinson? I mean, are these all different paths? Speaking of paths,
Well, they're both dementing illnesses. There's a whole spectrum of dementing illnesses. Both of them currently are incurable diseases. Both of them have treatments that are available now that very little in terms of impact. They can slow the progress of the disease, but they can't stop it, which is what we're after. And in both cases, you have caregiver support groups in both. This last year, we spent a tremendous amount of time devoting our energies to discussion of early stage Alzheimer's. And by that, I mean people who are recently diagnosed. We spent a lot of time with the people that are recently diagnosed. And it's been an eye-opening experience for us, certainly at the Alzheimer's Association. You do it for so many years, but you lose the perspective, the patient group that Ray was just talking about now, because people are being diagnosed earlier in the disease process.
That is improving.
That's certainly improving. People have the chance to plan and do their powers of attorney and do all those important things and have all those conversations with their family members that you don't really want to have, but you must have if you have Alzheimer's disease. So in order to prepare the path, again, a critical path, prepare that path, that part of that journey, so that you'll know what you're going to be encountering. One of the reasons we do the caregiver conference every year is to help people down that path and tell them that there are plenty of resources available if they'll access them. We did a study 2 years ago and discovered that it takes people 29 months on average before they call us from the time they hear about our programs. There's a lot of denial about the disease. There's a lot of confusion about the disease. We all deal with the calls that come in. I have fillings. Will I get Alzheimer's disease? I have aluminum cookware. Will I get Alzheimer's disease?
Or, my both grandparents had it.
Right. Is it
Right.
guaranteed that I'll get Alzheimer's disease?
Right.
You have to say no. It depends on so many other factors that, as Ray was saying, we're in a dark age. We don't know what all those other factors are.
And one kind of factor, unless you actually are doing the caregiving, I can say my great Aunt Edith, what she did, had Alzheimer's, but I was not the caregiver. So I am not a part of that whole extra dimension of the disease.
Sure.
And the Mayor's Caregiver Conference, I think Ray said it earlier today, puts a human face on this. So let's talk about the one that's coming up.
Sure.
Ray.
Well, we're featuring Dr. Bruce Miller. We're bringing in. He's a nationally known speaker on the rare dementias, and particularly one that we're seeing a fair amount of in southern Arizona, and that's this whole spectrum of frontal temporal dementia. Famous here in Tucson is Pick's disease. More famous as kitty Alzheimer's, the Niemann-Pick's disease, which unfortunately has stricken the Parsegian family here in
Right.
Tucson.
So let me get there's Pick's disease and then there's Niemann-Pick's disease, or are they the same?
No,
One's for adults,
One's for adults,
children.
one's for children.
Right. Niemann-Pick usually strikes small children, and it's very progressive, but it has a lot of getting back to Parkinson's.
Sure.
These are nerves. The scientists tell us that the nerves are just breaking down
Right.
for reasons we don't understand. If they break down very young, it's Niemann-Pick disease. If they break down older, it may be Pick. But if it breaks down in the motor center of the brain where you control motion, it's Parkinson's. If it's in the thinking part of the brain, it's Alzheimer's. So it's just nerves that are breaking down for some unknown reasons. And I said S, reasons, we
Okay.
believe.
Sure.
Thank you for clearing that up. So Parkinson's is a breakdown of the motor and the nerves and of the motor functions.
Exactly.
And then Alzheimer's with the thinking functions.
Right.
And again with Pick's, did you say?
It's
Ray?
the frontal part of the brain, and it's usually in older people, not like...
And what does it affect, or Niemann-Pick's?
Niemann-Pick is usually in children, and they develop motor and mental, cognitive function, the
Yep.
ability to think. So
Rationality
it's
lost.
much younger. I mean, usually in the 8,
Right,
9,
and I think the
10-year-old.
heartbreaking, one of the many heartbreaking things about Niemann-Pick's is the baby is great, and the first 2 or 3 years you are, and then
All of a
so you
sudden
see
you
the
start
potential
seeing
of
symptoms.
this wonderful human being you love, and then have to watch it.
Yeah.
Well, again, we believe that putting all this knowledge in one place is the best way. And we think that understanding Niemann-Pick disease in children can help us understand Alzheimer's disease. Because the processes are probably different. I mean, the processes may be the same, but they're on different time course.
Right.
Okay, all right. And just before we have a clip, we want to show you just what you can expect at this wonderful conference for caregivers. That's both those that are in their own home and professional caregivers. And who's the featured speaker, Felipe?
Dr. Bruce Miller from University of California, San Francisco.
Niemann-Pick's
Our
guy, or-
specialist on frontal temporal dementia,
Frontal temporal.
Pick's disease.
All right.
For adults.
But let's take a look. We want to show you. Let's take a look at just what the value of this conference is.
The Alzheimer's Association Desert Southwest, we offer a whole range of different programs and services for the community, but quite honestly, the caregiver conferences are always my favorite. To me, seeing literally hundreds of folks in this community be able to get together and offer each other the support and the energy to be talking about what's happening, what's the latest with Alzheimer's disease, what are some new skills or resources that people can use, and it's about just connecting people together.
Hi, this is Local Matters, and that is the Mayor's Caregiver Education Conference. It's a conference set up by the Alzheimer's Association Desert Southwest Chapter, and we want to give you some information. It will be held March 18th at the Tucson Jewish Community Center, 3800 East River Road, and that's 322-6601. It's the 4th annual, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then again, if you want more information, it's 322-6601. And the website is alzdsw.org. And I meant to mention it is Wednesday, March 18th from 8:30 in the morning until 4 p.m. And we've just been showing you what the conference is all about. But this is, we want you to listen to a woman, and what is her name again?
This is Miss Heidi Hess, who's one of our wonderful volunteers, and typically she drives up from Huachuca City to be with us for the conference and run our gift store, and also to meet with family caregivers and help those who would like to talk about the disease.
And she was a longtime caregiver for her
Longtime
husband.
caregiver, unfortunately lost her husband in 2007 after about a 10 or 15 year long period.
And
with
is
him.
still volunteering?
Still volunteering.
All right, let's meet Heidi.
It progresses fast, and it's like you have to think ahead of time what could happen. If I lived alone with my husband way out in the country on some acreage, and things happened. I know they were happening, but I actually denied him. He would get up at night and flatten the tires on the car. And then in the morning he would say, I don't know who did that. And I realized real quick to completely agree with him. I say, well, yes, we'll have to get that fixed again. And it's just things like that that happen continuously.
Hi, I'm Vicki Evans, and this is Local Matters, and we're with Felipe Hakame and Ray Woosley. And I should mention, Felipe is from the Desert Southwest Chapter Alzheimer's Association, and Ray is the president of Critical Path Institute. Are surgeries at all beneficial? Is that just a thing that, probably a very stupid question, and treating of any kind of
Well,
Alzheimer's or
surgical,
dementia?
not for dementia.
Okay.
It is being used to implant stimulating devices for some movement disorders. But I'm not aware of any surgical procedures that have been tested even. It's mostly, the interventions have been trying to prevent the nerves from dying by blocking the production of proteins in the brain that they think are causing the problem. So many of the drugs that are used in Alzheimer's today slow the symptoms of the disease, but they don't stop it. And that's what we've got. And one of the real challenges is identifying people ahead of time who are going to get it, because once they develop symptoms, it's very often difficult to find ways to intervene, and even in animal models and in cell cultures. Once the process starts, it's awfully hard to slow down.
So my understanding from what you're saying is if you can start it before someone even shows a symptom or start treatment, that's
the goal.
Are we doing that at all right now?
Well, certainly early prevention, as Ray was saying, has taken some leaps, and you know, there's some other things about it. The other surgical thing that leaps to my mind is people with normal pressure hydrocephalus, which is
Yes.
you do have some surgery there that can relieve some of the pressure on the brain. That used to be called water on the brain, you know, and that can lead to all sorts of dementing symptoms and strokes and all sorts of other things. But you know, Vicki, I think one of the issues that we struggle with every day for family caregivers, like we were just seeing Heidi Hess, who was an exceptional family caregiver. They're not taking care of themselves. They're taking excellent care of the person. And it was because of that they're not seeing the dentist any longer. They're not going to their own doctor. They're you know, having to put their life on hold to try to help the person, and you know, they're not taking good care of themselves,
And
unfortunately.
that's what a domino effect that can be.
Yes.
Exactly.
Listen, we only have a couple of minutes, and I just want to know, and then I want to get your contact information up. Pardon me, I have a little frog in my throat. So let's take a look here. Once again, the pardon me, Alzheimer's Association, located 3003 South Country Club. Phone number locally 322-6601, and the helpline is 800-272-3900. That's 24-hour helpline, and alzdsw.org. And for Critical Path, again, they're located at 1730 East River Road, number 200, phone number 547-3440. And the website is c-path.org. We only have 30 seconds. So where do we go from here in managing the fight? 30-second question, isn't that great?
Boy.
Yeah. Well, I think the answer is for the community to become educated, learn about this disease, and learn what resources are available for their patients. Support research, absolutely. We've got to support education broadly on health, and Alzheimer's is a big part of that.
All right.
Yep.
Well, thank you both very much. This has gone extraordinarily fast, and I'm glad you're doing the heavy lifting for so many of us.
Well, thanks for what you do.
All right.
Yeah,
Remember,
absolutely.
Alzheimer's, it affects all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.